All right. I think this is recording. So, we're going to talk slightly more about energy drains, um, how it is that we can protect our own energy against drain. Now, I feel like people kind of are feeling pretty depleted on most ends these days. And so that's kind of why I'm bringing this up. Um, most people I talk to, I think the general consensus is a lot of us notice our social lives have changed, mostly because the financial aspect of things has changed. So I've noticed for myself and a lot of friends that are trying to be more financially responsible, they've had to put things on hold, like going out to eat dinner, going out for drinks, just casual things that, like I've even mentioned before, I used to do these kind of things like Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or maybe even just Friday, Saturday, or just Saturday or Friday. Um, like, I'd usually go out at least once a week. Um, that's not even the case anymore. It's not necessarily that I can't afford it. It's just that I'd rather not, if that makes sense. Sometimes I'd rather just put my money in other places. Um, but that kind of gets in the way of cultivating relationships as well. And that's been one thing that, while I'm not, like a superstar at it, I'm not perfect at it, of course, Um, I make mistakes socially and things. Like, I'm not like perfect. Like, I'm pretty sure anyone who knows me well has at least some complaints, but I'd say I put in effort. I try. I don't think anybody would assume that I like try to slack in my connection or effort to try to connect, even if it's not really a one to one of what they might prefer. At least I think most people notice that I put in effort, and I try to make it quality effort. Um, but you know, like I don't think I've never heard anybody complain about that. But um, I guess what I was gonna get at in this is kind of a part two. Um, talking about how to protect against energy drain with people in social settings. And before, we kind of talked about, the energy drain that can happen in social settings when, social settings as it pertains to, um, um, like a connection, as far as like meeting up, making plans, doing stuff, kind of being on the same page, uh, keeping things as convenient as they can be. When I say convenient, I mean, I'll give you an example. Like once, I can't remember where I was trying to fly. I want to say maybe I had to fly to Missouri or something like that. And I was in San Diego and my mom was in LA. So, my dad came up with this plan where he was like, it would be nice if you could both fly out of LAX. And that would have meant I would have to drive at minimum 2 hours to LA to catch a flight, be at the airport early. LAX, you're there like 2 hours early or so, or maybe 90 minutes just to make sure you get smoothly through security. Like you can spend less time at security, but usually it's not recommended. So just for peace of mind, usually they say 2 hours or so. So usually you want to get there early because it is a very busy airport. So that's not only the minimum 2 hour drive, but then the minimum being at the airport early because this would have been on the Thanksgiving weekend. So definitely be there early. Don't be there like 20 minutes to get through security before your flight leaves. So, and then the flight, however long that flight was to Missouri, that, let's call it 5 hours, 4 hours, I don't really remember. But it's multiple hours long. And then we would have landed in St. Louis, Missouri, and then had to drive another 2 or so hours to the little town. So I'm like, at minimum, that's 6 hours, not counting the flight. So in my head, I'm like, what? In whose mind is this like a good idea? You know what I mean? That's not convenient, right? That's not a convenient plan. Like, it made more sense for me to fly out of San Diego, for my mom to fly out of LAX, and then try to get a time where we're close enough to arrival at the airport, um, to be able to just like get to the airport, and then like at a similar time frame, and then all carpool, because I think we're meeting one aunt there as well, and then all carpool to um be able to fly. I mean, to be able to drive in a rental van. And so that was, my dad's plan. That to me did not sound like a good plan at all. I don't know where that plan came from. But that's the kind of thing that I think of when I think of inconvenience. I'm like, that is the most inconvenient route to get somewhere. It's like, if you live near an airport that has a direct flight, why would you drive over 2 hours to another city to catch another flight at a different time, from another city? And then once I would get back to LA, I'd still have to drive back. Like however many days we were going to be in Missouri, I'd have to drive back from, once I got to LA, I'd have to drive from LA back to San Diego. So it's like, no, let's not do that. Like, that doesn't sound like something I'm gonna sign on for, which I didn't sign on for it. But um, sometimes there's a way of, doing things a little more efficiently. So sometimes when people who have situations where they kind of plan that way, or situations where they're always late, like an hour late or something, and you're like busting your chops to get somewhere early, and then you're looking for parking, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get there with like 5 minutes to spare, once I park, and you're telling them, oh, I'm walking over or whatever, expecting that they're hopefully walking over, and they're not even on their way. It's like, come on. So sometimes things like that, like, people just assume that someone's going to be there all day long. I've met people like that, where I've noticed, I stopped having to plan with them. I stopped trying to plan with them pretty shortly after that. It only took a couple times. Like one day, I learned that they really liked whiskey, so I wanted to meet with them and another friend, because I was like, you know, we were meeting to have fun, and so me and like two other friends and this person were gonna meet, um, just chat, drink some whiskey at this Japanese whiskey bar, and they didn't show up. They kept texting, "Oh, I forgot my wallet," you know, and then they went back to get it, which would have taken them 15 to 20 minutes out of the way. And, we sat and ordered and ate our food and left, and we just happened to be going to a bar after that. And the person was like, "Oh, I'm going to be at that bar. I'll meet at the bar." And I was like, "Well, I'm just going to go for like one drink." Because like I'd already been out since like, I think the place opened at like 5:30. And by this time it was probably like after 8. And I was like, I had already been out. So I was like, I'm just going to have a drink real quick. So by the time it was almost 9, I was like headed out. And they were like, "Oh, you're leaving so soon?" It's like, what do you mean we're leaving? Like, I've been out since like 5 o'clock, like 5 something. Like, I went right after work or something. Um, and so did my other friends. And so it was just kind of interesting to me that we were just kind of doing that. And I don't really know. I think uh mm, you know, I think there was a second time where I tried to make plans with that person, and something happened similarly where they just didn't show up on time, like to an extent that it would have been like way like hours later, where I was just like, there's a certain point where you just kind of say you're not going to show up, right? But I don't know, that person just, I don't understand how that worked. But I didn't know them very well, and some other friends of mine knew them very well, and I overheard my other friends one day mentioning something about them, and I was like, oh, like, yeah, so they're just like, it's a pattern. They're like that with everybody. So I was like, well, I'm not gonna really spend more time inviting people that are kind of that way. Like, if you're gonna be like an hour late consistently, or like 3 hours late, it's like, that's too much. That's too much. Like, I understand on occasion, something happens, your car breaks down, you definitely do lose your keys or misplace your stuff, whatever. Like, I get that. Um, but I guess what I wanted to talk about outside of the timing inconveniences, with those kind of examples, was the energy inconvenience. It has to do with like not just like proximity and time or money necessarily, but kind of like the energy drain emotionally. And I think because I've gotten so burnt out from work in psychology in the past, I know what that emotional burnout, compassion fatigue kind of burnout feels like. And I'm still kind of like, I guess, not 100% recovered from it, because I do notice whenever certain people kind of start like bringing up some stuff, I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, where I would have originally been like, okay, I want to be there for this person, I do notice myself being like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't want to hang out to like have this kind of a hangout, you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to like unwind and like relax and have some jokes, and like, I'm not saying it needs to be completely superficial. If people have things they want to discuss, I think is perfectly fine and appropriate. But it's like, to take the whole night or the whole dinner or the whole meeting to kind of like unload every time, like, I've kind of noticed, I do have some people in my life that are kind of like that. They're kind of unloaders, kind of like an emotional dump. And I'm not talking about, okay, talk to me about your shitty week, talk to me about your shitty day, talk to me about your boss, or this stupid place that tried to scam you or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I mean, I do that, everybody does that, I think is perfectly natural and normal. But I'm talking about, you know, I don't even want to say it, but it almost seems like, people who want to like use you for just kind of like the energy that they get from you, because they like hearing nice things and, that kind of thing. But I feel like it's kind of like, okay, if you want to hang out, it doesn't need to be like about misery all the time. It can be fun. Let's catch up on life. Let's talk about what's going right as well as what's going wrong. Not just, reciting every wrong thing that's gone wrong for all eternity. It's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like once it gets to that point, like, people kind of need, and I'm not saying this in like a mean way. I think when people get professional help, it's an admirable thing. I think people should get professional help. I think they should get it before they need it. That's my opinion. Just like you go to the doctor every year for like a physical, or you get your eyes examined or your teeth examined and things. It preventative, I think, it makes sense in my opinion to go, and make sure you get like, some kind of a evaluation especially if it's covered by insurance, get an evaluation and make sure it's covered, make sure that, you have a professional talking to you about depression, anxiety, trauma. At least once a year, somebody gives you a checklist that asks you if you're like depressed or how your mood has been or whatever. Um, and you kind of just relax. Um, you know, if nothing's wrong, it's like cool, you can just relax and just go on about your day. Just like if you have a physical, it's like maybe they'll be like, okay, blood sugar is a little high. Okay, we got your labs back, this and that. You might be better. Of course, most of us usually need to diet and exercise, and they'll say that. But same with mental health. They'll probably be like, maybe you need to sleep some more, put in some more time for meditation, those types of things. But you know, or they might recommend some things for you, either medications or therapy or groups or something. Even if you don't take their, recommendations, just hearing them out. I do that. So, like, when I say that people need to get help, I really don't mean it to be like that person, when there are problems, they need to get help. Like, I'm not saying it like in a derogatory or like mean or rude way. I literally mean, I personally believe that people are better off when they get regularly screened for their health, including mental health. And so, like, I think people don't see it in themselves sometimes, when they're not really functioning at their best. I think a lot of us in certain fields, I've noticed in psychology as well, um, we tend to be good at burning ourselves out because we know how, and there's a purpose to do it for. Because usually, when you're burning yourself out, it's for your clients, for the work that's gonna come out into, progress for your clients and getting them closer to their goals, or like educating them on something to do with their goals or whatever it may be. It's easy to kind of work towards someone who it has some level of need that you're helping them with, or some level of illness that you're helping them with. I find it easy to help people like that. Not that I have always had the energy to do it, but I find it easy as in, you know, theoretically, it's easy to be like say for example, if I knew that, a really close friend of mine really needed something, and maybe it's not physically or financially inconvenient for me or time wise, but maybe they're like, 5 o'clock on Sunday morning, I need you to help me. I need you to pick me up. Can you take me over to the airport? And I have to rent a car from the airport because that's the only one I can afford, and I'm desperate because I need it for work. Um, and that's inconvenient. That's inconvenient as hell. But if somebody close to me asked me to do that, and they weren't like overusing, me to kind of support them with stuff, and it was just a one time kind of thing, it would be easy to wake up and get in the car and get them at 5 o'clock and help them out. Maybe not sleep, not be able to stay up as late as I wanted to on a Saturday night because I know I have to wake up and be like actually driving at like 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. I can lose one Sunday's kind of like rest, sleep in. I mean, like I've told people know that I wake up sometimes around 5, usually closer to 5:30, 6:30. Um it's an insomnia thing though. It's not necessarily like a thing that's like, oh, I'm better than people cuz I do this. It's not planned. I don't prefer it. It just happens, and so I just kind of roll with it cuz it does help me cuz it's a time frame where I can get a lot done. So I might actually be up at 5 in the morning, but usually I'm not helping anybody or doing anything. If I'm doing anything at all, I'm doing my own thing. Exactly what I want to be doing. I'm not doing things that I don't feel like doing when it's 5 something in the morning and I'm awake, So that's kind of me time. And so things like that, it would be easy to help somebody. Um Now if somebody was like, um I really want to sleep in, so could you maybe go pick up some donuts and drop them? I'll leave my front door, or leave a table at my front door. Could you go pick up some donuts at 5 o'clock in the morning and bring them over to my house for no reason? There's no birthday, there's no nothing. Just your friend wants to sleep in and wants to wake up to donuts at 8 and wants you to get the freshest ones that they put out at 5 o'clock. It's like, dude, unless I'm in love with somebody or something, there's no way I'm getting up at 5 to go get someone some random donuts. That get it yourself. Like things like that. So it's like it's different. Like I could see myself getting up at 5 a.m. as an inconvenience to myself to help somebody in need, especially if I could do it and it wasn't like some extravagant request. Um, Comparing that to like getting up at 5 a.m. just to do someone like a favor for fun. Um, if it's an inconvenience to my energy or schedule. But I've noticed a lot of people suffering these days, and I've been in that camp. I've been in that camp. Like I'm barely crawling my ass out of it. So, I've been in that camp for a while. Um I get it. Like I know that I'm an energy drain on people too sometimes, and I'm just like, "Oh, shoot, like maybe I should like look out for that." But now that I'm kind of like getting my energy kind of back, I'm kind of noticing when people do it to me more. And this is all a product of these times. Now, I'm not one to be like, this is the end times or this is whatever. Like, I don't know. I don't know any of that kind of stuff. I don't know anything about it. I know what I see. I recognize patterns. And these are things that I've definitely noticed. That socially, things have changed. Financially, things have changed. Uh, Mentally, emotionally, for people, things have definitely changed. Um, People have, you know, I feel like most people are trying their best, though. Like, most people I have around me, I feel like they're trying really hard. I don't feel like I know anybody who I can identify that's like not trying. Like maybe some people are missing the mark. I know for a long time I was missing the mark for sure. Just trying to hold down a job that I was like, I have no energy or desire to do this. And I tried and tried, and I was like, this is getting worse instead of better. Luckily, I had all that PTO and was able to kind of recognize after taking so many days off all the time that my energy was not recovering, and that was going to be at the end of a phase, of doing that kind of work. Because I was like, this is, it got to a point where I was like, I'm not going to the gym anymore. Like I literally wasn't going to the gym anymore. Because of where I was living and stuff, I literally was eating so much takeout. um and it wasn't necessarily always the healthy takeout, and I literally was just like, you know, I wasn't doing that well. But things did kind of go, they kind of did dip. In early June and late May of 2022, things did kind of dip. And it really took me till September of 2022 to realize it. It took me, and well, it took me just a little bit, probably from April to May, to realize the house issue. It took me from about June, well, the roommates issue, I'll put it that way. And I did not realize it, but it got worse and wasn't going to get better. So I realized that in April. I was like, if we can't make any changes, and then I put my foot down in May, and changes weren't going to happen. So June, I moved of 2022, but I still was working that job, and I felt like, okay, well, moving should help. But then moving didn't really help necessarily because I wasn't wanting to leave my San Diego life. I was just wanting to leave that house. But because of the economy, I couldn't really afford an apartment that either didn't have roommates or, wasn't a total piece of crap or wasn't like super far in like Ramona or something. I couldn't really afford anything that would have been nearby. So the easiest solution, was to move up to LA. And then I was like, well, now my whole life is in San Diego, minus the roommates. That was the only real issue that I was kind of dealing with. And then the job too, because I was like, by September, between June and September, that's when I realized that I didn't even want to do the job anymore. So I stuck it out till December of 2022 just because I was like, I want to be able to, um, uh, hit my 7 year mark. And, um, that was important to me. Um, 7 years surviving working in a place like that, 7 years of paid work. I did probably half a year and then another like 10 months or so for free, pretty much, um, over a 2 year or year and a half period. Um, so it was more like 8.5 years I was kind of involved with this company. Um, but it took me a while. It took me a while, and I do think things like podcasting helped me just because I realized how much I was talking about the same thing. Like I was even like, am I really ranting about this roommate again? Like am I really on here like every day after work going and recording, in a parking lot and just what was the thing that these roommates did this time, and then what's the stuff that they did during this week even, and the stuff I'm about to go home to tonight kind of thing. Like it was almost every day. And people around me were like, you need to get out of there. And I was kind of like, yeah, but it's cheap. you know I was paying 700 something a month, and in San Diego that's still super super cheap. But it was cheap because the quality sucked. So that was the cheapness of that situation. It didn't always suck though, and I did kind of have hopes at one point that the problematic person, because it really was one problematic person. The other people, it could be annoying, but the one person was problematic. And as they got more and more problematic, the problems in the house got worse and worse because they always were like stemming from everybody being mad about this person being allowed to be this way and all this kind of stuff. And then the one person who had control of the situation was not handling it. But I mean, if you've been following me online for years, you know that I've brought these situations up so many times that it's crazy to even like think that it's been over a year ago since I've really talked to any of those people. So, I mean, I think about them. Of course, they definitely left a dent of an impression, uh, that it wasn't pleasant, but, um, the reason why I'm mentioning all that is because that is what an energy drain looked like to me. I didn't even notice it. I didn't notice that was what was happening, but I just did know every day I had complaints about these people. And people who know me, it's like I'm really not that easily upset or angered by people. Like I get annoyed by things easily, I'd say, cuz I kind of prefer things to be, I'm a little particular about how I prefer things to be, but I also get over it really easily. Like, if I put, you know, like if, like, say if I'm out at a bar or something and I buy a drink, I'm at a bar, I go up to the bar and then a friend is just like, hey, can you buy me one too? And then I'll just buy them one, and then they don't Venmo me back or pay me back or anything, and just got a beer on me or whatever. And like, it happens, and like maybe they just wanted a free beer, but whatever, like things like that. It's like, it's like a $7 beer, $10 beer, like whatever. It's not really a big deal. Like I'm not gonna be buying them a beer every day, but it's like I'd be annoyed. I'd be like, they didn't pay me back like $7 or $10 or whatever. I didn't even mention it. But I also don't know their intentions, and it also is my responsibility. If I want the money back, send them a Venmo request. Like there's nothing rude about it. Um, I feel like when a Venmo request is made in a timely fashion, there's nothing um inappropriate about that. So I I usually um yeah, I'm not like easily angered by things. Like something like that, I'd probably be like, figure out what's my role in those situations, and if I really don't like it, I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. You know, um, and I can be a little direct about things, but if that happened like a second time, that I notice someone's kind of like mooching off my tab, and when I go up, and I give the bartender my card, and then they're like, if somebody comes up and like, hey, can you get me one? Like, oh, like I'm on a one, I'm on a one drink minimum for my budget tonight or something, and that's probably what I would say. I'd just be like, I only came here to buy one drink. So, and that I'm closing out, and that would be that. I wouldn't make much more of it. If they want to get mad, they can get mad. I mean, it's my money. I don't have to spend it on people. But that's kind of how I usually take things. It's kind of more like, okay, I'll make like an internal kind of strategy around it and then try not to get burned. Um, but I don't like have friends that are really like that in all honesty. That's why I'm just kind of like, okay, that would be weird, but I mean, I could see it happening. Like if it happened, that's why I'm like, if it happens once, I wouldn't really care. But if it was something that like I noticed that somebody just like follows me to the bar every single time, I'd be like, you know, you're kind of, not doing this responsibly, you know, and I'm not gonna keep buying people alcohol. If you come to a bar with no money and you don't, I mean, I don't mind people asking me to get them a drink, but I feel like it's weird if it's like every time. That would be odd, right? But again, I don't know anybody who does that specifically. I'm just saying, like, if it were to be the case, I would find it odd. Um, but when somebody's more of like an emotionally energy draining person, you feel that. Um, you feel that. You definitely feel it. You feel it before you even go meet them. You'll be there and be just like, man, like, you know, why do I have to go meet this person? I don't want to go meet this person. I hope that they're not, talking about these topics again and all that kind of stuff. Like, I hope that they're, in a different mindset or whatever. And, you know, I don't mind lending an ear, being a friend. I really don't mind it. But, I just noticed, there's a lot of people going through a lot of things lately. And I'm not really the one that would be in the best position for someone to be unloading on a very regular basis because I've got my own stuff to deal with. And so I think most people who know me well know that. If you don't know that, then you probably don't know me. You probably don't talk to me on a regular basis. Uh, if you don't know what my kind of like life kind of looks like in general, then you probably really just don't know what I'm up to lately. Because anyone who would assume that I would have so much energy to give just only to them, who wouldn't question that, is like, I think they really just don't know my life like at all right now. Like I don't mind talking on the phone for hours with friends. I don't mind, catching up with people. Like when it's convenient for everybody involved, cool, let's do it, But if it's not convenient, I think none of us are really bending over backwards to do it. But I do think I have some friends that I've talked about it a little bit before and not really gone into too much depth with it. But I do know some people that, I'll put it this way. Um, I think they're struggling, which I get. Um, I think they need help, which is fine to need help. I think maybe they're not getting the proper help and support that they need, which is why they're being the way that they are being, is because they need somebody. But also, I am not that person. Um, you know, if somebody needs someone like that on a very regular basis, like once or twice a week, that's too much. Every day, that's way too much. I mean, I sympathize, I feel for people, and I've definitely been there, but there's only so much that your friends can deal with. They've got their own lives. There's only so much that your family can deal with. They've got their own lives. Um, it does help to know a lot of people and kind of, you know, if you need support, spread the support around, kind of, so you're not just bombarding one person all the time. But that's one reason not to burn bridges. I'm not saying to like use them for your own like personal, you know, dumping ground. Like when you need to unload on somebody, it's like, well, at least I have like 20 friends that I can call, not like that. Um, but I think for myself, it does help to know a lot of people. I would say that I can't recall ever having one time in my life where I felt like I was alone, like fully. And I want to talk about that next because I think that's another issue with like energy is like kind of the give and take. So that'll be part three. But I'll continue to talk about that next, and thanks for listening.